working to connect a region of over 600 cultural bridges between our lands.
Good evening, I'm Alma Angeles and you're watching ASEAN in Focus on tonight's program.
Saya harus berterus terang.
Southeast Asian nations have made no significant progress on implementing a peace plan aimed at ending bloodshed in Myanmar. Indonesia President Joko Widodo said today on the final day of the summit. Southeast Asian nations vowed tougher action on human trafficking as criminals increasingly use social media and other online platforms to recruit and exploit victims. Vietnam State Electricity Company is warning that the national power system would come under strain this summer due to anticipated heat waves days after the country recorded its highest ever temperature. The Philippine economy grew more than expected in the first 3 months of the year, according to official data showing today, though the pace was the slowest in 2 years as soaring inflation and interest rate hikes crimped consumer spending. First in our news, Southeast Asian nations have made no significant progress on implementing a peace plan aimed at ending bloodshed in Myanmar, according to Indonesian President Joko Widodo today on the final day of the summit. Escalating violence in junta-ruled Myanmar has dominated the 3-day meeting of ASEAN Regional Bloc on the Indonesian island of Flores. Let's listen in first.
Saya harus berterus terang bahwa implementasi 5-point konsensus belum ada kemajuan yang signifikan, sehingga diperlukan kesatuan ASEAN untuk merumuskan langkah-langkah ke depan. Yang ingin saya pastikan adalah bahwa isu Myanmar tidak boleh menghambat percepatan pembangunan komunitas ASEAN, karena pembangunan komunitas ini adalah yang ditunggu oleh masyarakat ASEAN.
Jakarta's chairmanship of the bloc this year had raised hopes ASEAN could push for a peaceful solution using its economic weight as well as its diplomatic experience. But divisions within ASEAN have hampered those efforts. Diplomatic sources told AFP that some countries at the summit had suggested inviting back the junta to high-level meetings. Myanmar still belongs to the 10-member ASEAN bloc, but has been barred from its summits due to the junta's failure to implement the peace plan. ASEAN is seen by critics as a toothless talking shop, but its charter principles of consensus and non-interference have hamstrung its ability to stop the violence in Myanmar. The latest draft of the end of summit statement seen by AFP has left the paragraph on Myanmar open, reflecting diplomatic difficulties over the issue. Staying in Indonesia, the Southeast Asian nations vowed tougher action on human trafficking as criminals increasingly use social media and other online platforms to recruit and exploit victims. I'd like to emphasize that the crime of human trafficking must be completely eradicated from the upstream to downstream, according to Indonesian President Joko Widodo, ahead of the May 9 to 11 summit on the tropical island of Flores. International alarm is growing over internet scams in the region that are often staffed by trafficking victims, tricked or coerced into promoting bogus crypto investments. Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar have emerged as countries of destination for victims, according to the International Organization for Migration. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations Regional Bloc adopted a declaration pledging to strengthen cooperation and coordination to catch traffickers and identify victims. Indonesia's Coordinating Minister for Political, Legal, and Security Affairs, Mahfud MD, said that based on their inspection, they would usually send the people in a large number of 100 or 200 people without proper documents. In the past year, Indonesia has rescued more than 1,000 of its nationals working in online scams in Myanmar and Cambodia. Philippine authorities recently rescued over 1,000 people from several Asian nations who were trafficked into the country and also forced to run online scams. Upholding international law, promoting trade and investments, and addressing climate change must be the priorities of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, according to President Marcos. In order to harness the potential of our region, he said, he believes that ASEAN must now double its efforts, especially in these following priority areas, Marcos said during the 42nd ASEAN Summit plenary session at the Meruwara Komodo Convention Center in Labuan, Indonesia. Against the backdrop of complex geopolitical challenges and macroeconomic fragilities, an ASEAN community that plays a central role in shaping the evolving regional architecture, an ASEAN community that is dynamic, innovative, and integrated for the global economy, and an ASEAN community that can realize the full potential for its peoples is the indispensable bedrock for a peaceful, stable, and resilient region, he said. Marcos called on his fellow ASEAN leaders to uphold international law and the international rules-based system to ensure peace, security, stability, and prosperity of the region. President Marcos also said the Philippines, as a staunch advocate of the protection of the rights and welfare of migrants, welcomes Indonesia's ASEAN chairmanship priority of strengthening regional cooperation to address cross-border crimes. He lauded Indonesia's efforts to intensify the fight against trafficking in persons caused by the misuse of technology, as well as to mainstream the protection of migrant workers and their families in crisis. President Marcos Jr. and Vietnamese Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh have agreed to elevate the Philippines and Vietnam's cooperation in the fields of trade and investment, tourism, agriculture, and defense and security. The commitment was made when the two leaders held a bilateral meeting on the sidelines of the 42nd Association of Southeast Asian Nations Summit and related summits in Indonesia. Acknowledging the two countries' improved relationship with the help of the private sector, the President stressed the need for both governments to step up their partnership, which should be beyond just in trading in rice. Pham assured Marcos that Vietnam would work with the Philippines on trade promotion to continue diversifying supply chains and trade between the two countries. President Marcos likewise expressed readiness to establish better communications between the two nations' foreign service and military leaders. Pham, on the other hand, asked for the Philippines' support on Vietnam's candidacy for various UN-led organizations, including the UN Human Rights Council, UN Security Council, UN Commission on International Trade Law, and the presidential seat for the UN General Assembly's 91st session. The Philippines and Vietnam formally established diplomatic relations on June 12, 1976. In tonight's other news, Vietnam State Electricity Company is warning that the national power system would come under strain this summer due to anticipated heat waves days after the country recorded its highest ever temperature. Temperatures surpassed 44 degrees Celsius or 111 degrees Fahrenheit in central Vietnam over the weekend, according to national forecasters, breaking a previous high set in 2019. State utility EVN said in a statement that demand for electricity in the next 3 months, as temperatures peak in northern Vietnam, could outstrip supply. It also warned of low water levels that could have a severe impact on the country's hydroelectric dams. Water levels to hydropower dams in northern Vietnam are 30 to 40% down compared to average levels in previous years, it said, adding that the expected return of the El Nino phenomenon could keep water levels low and temperatures high for the rest of the year. If the drought situation is severe on a large scale, if there is no flooding or the flood level is low, the power supply station may continue to face difficulties, it said. EVN called on consumers to save energy, especially during peak hours at noon and in the evening. It urged people to set air conditioners to 26 degrees Celsius or above and avoid using large capacity electric appliances at the same time. The communist country relies mostly on coal and hydropower for its energy, but has said it wants to increase renewable energy production in the coming years. Scientists say global warming is exacerbating adverse weather, with a recent report from the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change warning that every increment of global warming will intensify multiple and concurrent hazards. The Philippines economy grew more than expected in the first 3 months of the year, according to official data showing that today, though the pace was the slowest in 2 years, as soaring inflation and interest rate hikes crimped consumer spending. 6.4% expansion in the first 3 months was well down from the revised 7.1% enjoyed in the last quarter of 2022, which analysts said could give the country's central bank some room to step back from its monetary tightening drive. Expectations were for 6.2% growth. Let's listen in.
The high prices, elevated prices last year, as you know, resulted in tightening of monetary policy, no? So that the interest rates increase. That the effects of those would be felt in latter months, no?
Socio-Economic Planning Secretary Arsenio Balisacan said the lower print was partly due to high inflation and last year's rate hikes, which reined in consumer spending. Consumer spending slowed to 6.3% in the first quarter, down from 10% during the same period last year. The Philippine Central Bank raised interest rates several times last year to rein in inflation, which hit its highest level in more than a decade.
And so perhaps we are starting to feel that because there are usually some lag effects. But then, as we said earlier, the fact that this inflation has begun to come down, and we expect that trajectory to the target rate of 2 to 4% by the end of the year, that could rebuild the confidence of the consumers, no, and the business community, and so that could get spending again and investment moving up again. And
Balisacan said the government remained confident it'll hit its growth target this year despite headwinds.
And despite various risks and challenges, the economic outlook for the Philippines in the near and medium term remains solid. We are confident that we will reach our target for this year of 6.0 to 7.0% growth rate and 6.5 to 8.0% for 2024 to 2028. The Filipino people can rest assured that we are committed to achieving rapid, sustained, and inclusive economic growth. We strongly encourage everyone to contribute to building a prosperous, inclusive, and resilient Philippines.
The Philippines had previously trimmed its growth target as geopolitical and trade tensions, a possible global economic slowdown, and typhoons could dampen economic activity. Balisacan said the ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia, as well as tensions in the South China Sea and the Taiwan Strait, were among the risks to the growth outlook. The United States said it has opened an embassy in the Kingdom of Tonga as it jostles with China's growing clout in the South Pacific. The new embassy in the capital, Nuku'alofa, was officially opened Tuesday, according to the U.S. State Department in a statement, with more diplomatic staff to follow. It said this opening symbolizes the renewal of our relationship and underlines the strength of our bilateral relations to the people of Tonga and to our partnerships in the Indo-Pacific region. Tonga, a Polynesian archipelago of about 100,000 people, is the latest in a string of Pacific Island states targeted in a renewed U.S. diplomatic push into the region. The U.S. has been the dominant military force in the South Pacific since World War II, but the region is increasingly the arena for powers to compete for commercial, political, and military influence. China, the rising military power in the region, has also asserted itself through its expanding diplomatic reach, investment, police training, and security deals. The U.S. and its allies were taken by surprise when China reached a secretive security pact last year with Solomon Islands. Despite denials from Solomon Islands, U.S. and Australian officials have voiced concerns the pact could open vast waters to China's military. In tonight's other news, officials from Papua New Guinea and Australia continued their dialogue on climate change recently held in Port Moresby. Christine Tilley, Australian Ambassador for Climate Change, said the annual Papua New Guinea-Australia Climate Change Dialogue was a fantastic opportunity to bring together government and NGO and private sector partners to discuss how they can tackle the climate crisis together. The details from Echo Ortelesa Quinola.
After the long disturbance of COVID-19 pandemic, the annual dialogue on climate change between Papua New Guinea and Australia commences in person at Hilton, Port Moresby. The dialogue aims to advance priority issues and showcase achievement under the bilateral partnership of the two countries. Special Climate Change Envoy Mr. Ruel Yamuna and Climate Change and Development Authority Acting Managing Director William Lakain led the Papua New Guinea representatives. Australian Ambassador for Climate Change, Ms. Christine Tilley, heads the Australian delegates. Among the key priorities include our advancing Papua New Guinea-Australia climate change action plans for the next 5 years, climate finance, carbon market participation, international climate partnership, and among others. The dialogue ends with 2 agreement signings, the statement outcome, and the joint action plan.
Papua New Guinea is part of the Pacific, and as we all know, the Pacific is one of the regions most affected by the impacts of climate change. PNG has a strong reliance on rain-fed subsistence agriculture in rural areas, and changes in weather patterns will absolutely impact food systems here. Coastal and atoll communities will also be impacted by sea level rise and more frequent storms. That's why in July 2022, Australia joined Pacific leaders in declaring that the Pacific is facing a climate emergency, underscoring the urgency to scale up ambition, global ambition, and implementation of actions to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. And in PNG this year, we're working closely with the government here to design a long-term program to strengthen PNG's systems to help it access a greater share of international climate finance from both governments and the private sector.
This partnership demonstrates the commitment for a long-term program to battle climate change threats and impact. Echo Hortaleza Quinola, Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea. Eagle News, we live in extraordinary times.
Google said it's opening Bard, a rival to Microsoft-backed ChatGPT, to 180 countries as it expands use of artificial intelligence across its platform. Executives at an annual Google Developers Conference in Silicon Valley said that generative AI will also be used to supercharge the tech giant's leading search engine. Let's listen in first.
We are removing the waitlist and opening up Bard to over 180 countries and territories.
We've been applying AI to make our products radically more helpful for a while. With generative AI, we are taking the next step. With a bold and responsible approach, we are reimagining all our core products, including search. 7 years into our journey as an AI-first company, we are at an exciting inflection point. We have an opportunity to make AI even more helpful for people, for businesses, for communities, for everyone.
Now, Google is racing to catch up with rival Microsoft, which has rushed to integrate ChatGPT-like powers in a wide array of its products, including the Bing search engine. The AI-enhanced features of the company's Bing search engine and Edge internet browser became open for anyone. The services have been enhanced with the ability to work with images as well as text, and Microsoft intends to add video to the mix. Despite the rollouts by 2 of the world's biggest companies, companies, risks from AI include its potential uses for disinformation with voice clones, deepfake videos, and convincing written messages. A prominent computer scientist, often dubbed the godfather of artificial intelligence, recently quit his job at Google to speak out about the dangers of the technology. Geoffrey Hinton, who created some of the technology underlying AI systems, maintained that the existential threat from AI is serious and close. As my usual habit, I'd like to end the day on a positive note. Let's encourage and build each other up so that no one is left behind. And that's it for tonight's broadcast. I'm Alma Angela. Stay in the news because we live in extraordinary times. Good night.